We as human beings, once we go to the doctor and we're cured, while the illness is there, we're knocking on the doctor's door, we're phoning him every day. No, my appointment must be tomorrow, it can't be next week. But as soon as we are cured of our ailment, fortunate is the doctor who receives a thank you card from us. We remember the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salamullah, but unfortunately we are very selective in whom we remember. Yes, we have 10 nights of majalis for Sayyid al-Shuhada. Yes, in the month of Ramadan, we remember Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yes, on Ayyam Fatimiyya, we remember Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen. But how much do we really know about the other Imams? How much do we know about the life of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba? How much do we know about the life of Rasulullah? How much do we know about the life of Imam Baqir alayhi salam, Imam Sajjad, Imam Musa al-Kadhim, Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha, Imam al-Jawad, Imam al-Hadi, Imam al-Askari? How many of us know about Imam al-Mahdi ajalallah ta'ala farajahu sharif? So the idea is, inshallah, we can utilize this night to set forth the premise of how this Imam saved the religion, so that maybe in this kind of a PR, this kind of advertisement for the Imam, some of us will actually start to have affection for him and want to go home and spend more time reading about him than reading about NFL and who got bought and who got sold in the American Football League and what's happening between Liverpool and United. Because unfortunately our youth, when you tell them you need to know the names of 14 Ma'sumin, they're like, oh my God, 14 is too much. But they've memorized the names of every player that was bought and sold by the NFL for the last 10 years. You say to them, memorize the names of the Ma'sumin. They say, oh, but the names of the Ma'sumin are foreign. They're not names which I'm used to. But Roberto Carlos and Suarez, they're no longer foreign names. They're actually English names. Yes, Hispanic names, Habibi. It's because we have affinity towards that sport, because we love that it's entertainment. We're bothered to go and read and find out statistics of when they scored and when they were bought and how much and who took them and. Keeping up with the Kardashians seems to be nice these days. But when you want to keep up with the Ahlul Bayt, no, it becomes somewhat boring. But at the very same time, when we have mushkil, when we have problems in our lives, we go running and knocking at the doors of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salamullah, Ya Ali Mushkil Khusha, Ya Aba Abdullah, Ya Shafa, Ya Imam Zainul Abidin, O Bimari Karbala, and we're knocking at their doors. And as soon as they give us, not even Khuda Hafiz comes from us, we leave. It's something we need to ponder upon as Shia people before we start to say, why is it that the other Muslims have negated Ahlul Bayt? We must ask ourselves, have we not also negated Ahlul Bayt alayhim salamullah? Imam Hussein is important, but you cannot disregard the other Ahlul Bayt alayhim salamullah who salvaged the message of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. When we begin to negate the Ahlul Bayt, that's when we have people coming forward from our own. When you really want to understand the reason behind our disunity as Shia people, why we argue over Zanjir and Qama, and why we argue about one person saying something political, and why this and why that. The thing is, if you read the lives of Ahlul Bayt, you'll never question people. But if you haven't read the lives of Ahlul Bayt and the only narrative that you know is Karbala, you don't know what came before and what happened after, and how Ma'sooms dealt with those situations, then yes, you start to question every marja'iyah for what he does. People come forward and say, Agha Sistani's not making fatwas, he's not being politically involved. Well, Habibi, there were 11 Imams, not just the 12. There's only one of the 12 Imams actually went into Karbala and sacrificed. 11 Imams. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salamullah, only 3 years he spent fighting during the time of his Khilafah, because people fought wars with him. But many wars happened in the life of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salamullah when the 3 Khalifas ruled. Did Imam Ali go to war? No, he stayed at home. Did he join those wars? Did Imam go out in the time of the first and the second and the third when they declared wars on people? Did Imam Ali pick up Dhul Fiqar? No. Imam remained home. People turn around and say, oh, but why didn't Imam? Well, hold on. Why doesn't Ayatollah Sistani say this about that and whatnot? Why didn't Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib come out and say his own political opinion? When you begin to read the lives of the Ahlul Bayt as they should be read, then most of your questions will be answered. Someone will come forward and say, oh, we cannot work with the American government. Why? Because America is the shaitan. Habibi, let me tell you something. There is no bigger shaitan than Bani Umayyah and Bani Abbas. America, to the best of my knowledge, hasn't killed any Masoom Imam. Yes or no? Yet in the time of Bani Abbas, Imam Ja'far and Imam Musa al-Kadhim commanded two of their Shia to go and work in the political field. And they worked in the political field in order to safeguard our religion. Ask yourself sincerely, if there were just 3 people in the administration of the United States that were Shia, do you think when America went to Iraq, they would have gone to war next to the shrine of Imam Ali? Would they have not been advised by us? At the very least, we could have told them, listen, there will be a backlash. Maybe you don't respect Imam Ali, but there will be a severe backlash from the Shia because they will die for the shrine of Amir al-Mu'mineen, yes? But we sit at home, we don't get involved politically, we don't do anything. And then when the bala falls on our head, we start saying, Ya Imam Madad, Ya Imam Madad. Imam will give you Madad if you give yourself Madad first and foremost. Imam alayhi salam Allah sacrificed his life to uphold principles and teach values. But if you trample those values beneath your feet and you spend more time learning the names of NFL players but know nothing about your Imam, of course you're going to question everybody. And through questioning you will create disunity, and through disunity it becomes very easy for our enemies to take us down. Yes? Think of it this way, how powerful our unity can be as a Shia people. Our Imam Zaman wants 313 people from 1.7 billion Muslims, from almost 7 billion humans on this planet. Imam Zaman says, if I have 313 people, I can fulfill the entire world with peace and equity, equality. But I just need 313 people that are united in their dedication and their cause. So therefore, we must invest time in reading more about Ahlul Bayt and spend less time criticizing on Facebook and Twitter and creating more disunity amongst our ranks. And why am I speaking about this? Because had we known more about Imam Sajjad, we would never be hurting our Imam with our disunity. Unfortunately, the Mimbar of Rasulullah, the Mimbar of Abu Abdullah, has become politically associated, and I don't say that being politically associated is a bad thing. Politically associated for the right reasons is good. But it's become politically associated in the negative sense, insofar as I will come onto the Mimbar to praise a certain group within the Jamaat and put down another group within the Jamaat. I'll come to praise a certain cultural aspect of my Jamaat and put down another cultural aspect of the Jamaat. I'll praise the Pakistanis and say the Arabs don't know what they're doing. Or I'll praise the Arabs and say the Pakistanis don't know what they're doing. I'll say, oh, whoever doesn't do Zanjir Lanat Beshmar on him, and whoever's against this, and I start creating fitna within my own community. That's not what the Mimbar is about. The majalis of Ahlul Bayt, inshaAllah, as we will find out shortly, were created for one purpose and one purpose only. A purpose far above weeping for Imam Hussein. Although that is desirable and it is a must upon us, but it is this very thing about weeping for Imam Hussein. You see, my father used to raise me and say this to me: if you weep for Imam Hussein because it's a sad story, you're no different to the person who weeps watching a Bollywood movie, because that too is a sad story. But if you weep for Imam Hussein because of the values and principles that Abu Abdullah stood for, those are the tears of the Arifin. Those are the tears of people who understood the meaning behind Karbala. And the meaning behind our tears of Karbala is to unite in our sorrow. There is no such gathering in the world like the gathering of Majalis of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. And their very inception was to unite the hearts of the believers. The very reason behind Majalis was to bring us all together so that we can be mobilized to serve the cause of Abu Abdullah, which was what? Imam Hussein didn't say, I'm going to Karbala so that the Shia can cry and do matam, although that is good. That's our way of preserving. But that's not what Imam went for. Imam said, I'm only going for one thing. لِأَأْمُرَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَأَنْهَى عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. If my julus is not doing amr bil ma'ruf and nahi al munkar, then it's no purpose served. If my matam is not doing amr bil ma'ruf and nahi al munkar, then it's no purpose. You see, the Christians, they do Zanjir Zani also. Do your research. As a matter of fact, Christians done Zanjir Zani long before us, where they say we want to feel the pain of Christ, right? Nowadays it's only in New Mexico and South America where it's really practiced, that self-flagellation. But is their Zanjir and my Zanjir the same? No. My Zanjir should serve a greater purpose. Mine should be for Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi al Munkar. If Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi al Munkar are sidestepped, then I've missed the whole boat, right? So let us begin now by looking at the life of Imam Sajjad alayhi salamullah to understand how difficult the life of this Imam is and was. And what are the things that the Imam hoped to achieve? And did the Imam achieve them? If yes, how can we as a Shia people ensure their continued existence? And if the Imam could not achieve them due to the inaction of the people in his time, how can we respond to the call of the Imam today so that we can ensure the Imam's work and effort has not been wasted? We begin with the salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. As we mentioned in our opening statement, that the Imam alayhi salamullah, Imamah came to him under the most difficult circumstances. It came to him on Yawm Ashura, and I don't need to explain Yawm Ashura. We all know what happened on Yawm Ashura. When he became an Imam, you have to understand the demographics of the politics at the time. People had witnessed Rasulullah say, Hussein is from me and I am from Hussein. Allah loves whomever loved Hussein. People saw Rasulullah on Yawm al-Mubahala walking with Imam Hussein saying, bring your sons and our sons. People saw Rasulullah go into sujood and prolong his sujood so long that in his sajda 70 times he said Subhana Rabbi al-A'la wa bihamdih, only because he didn't want to disturb Imam Hussein while he played on his back. Yes. People saw and saw and saw the relationship between the prophet of this religion and the grandson of this religion. Yet that did not stop them from killing Imam Hussein alayhi salamullah. Yes or no? Okay. So now imagine Imam Sajjad, who was born years after the passing of Rasulullah. Do you think if on Yawm Ashura Imam Sajjad said, I am the Imam after Imam Hussein and I am God's Khalifa on earth, do you think Bani Umayyah would have not killed him? Most certainly they would have. So the first thing that Imam had to do is he had to declare his Imamah and make it a hujjah upon the people without endangering the lives of the Shias and without endangering Imamah itself. Not his life. Imam is not concerned about his life. Imam is concerned about the well-being of the concept of divinity, of Imamah, God's true representative. Someone who will represent Islam as it is, not the Islam of ISIS or anybody else, right? The Shias, we have some extreme elements as well, and then we bury it under the rug and say the Imam said so. Yes, we do. So we need that divine Imam, and the Imam alayhi salamullah had to declare his Imamah without bringing the wrath of the authorities at the time upon himself, in the same way that the people didn't care about killing Imam Hussein. They would have also killed Imam Zainul Abidin wa Sayyid al-Sajidin. Before Imam Hussein left Medina, he had a brother called Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah. Muhammad, unfortunately, because we are a nation that doesn't read, we have failed to understand him also. But that's not a surprise, because we failed to understand 11 Imams, right? People come forward and say Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah challenged Imam Sajjad to be the Imam. But that's not the case. And I will prove it to you inshallah with the salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. When Imam Hussein left Medina, Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah, you have to understand, he was one of the most bravest warriors. After the passing of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salamullah, Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah was the one who trained Abu Fadl al-Abbas in the art of war. Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah in the art of war was only second to Imam Hassan and Hussein. Imam Ali showed this in the Battle of Siffin, whereby he gave the banner to Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah. And when he came back, he gave it only to Imam Hassan and nobody else. That means he is second only to Imam Hassan. Had there been someone between him and Imam Hassan as a buffer, we would say that person. When Imam Hussein left, Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah came to him and he said, "Oh Aba Abdullah, I'm coming with you." He said, "No, you stay in Medina." He said, "Oh Aba Abdullah, the swords of your enemies are many, and the swords of your companions who have come to your support and aid are but a few. And you're telling me to remain behind in Medina with the women and children when I could be of service to you?" Imam Hussein's response was the following: "Oh my brother Muhammad, do not take offense, but trust in my judgment as an Imam. And recall a time when our grandfather Rasulullah left Medina to go in the battle of Tabuk, but he left our father Ali at home in Medina and said to him, 'Oh Ali, would you not like to be to me as Aaron was to Moses, except that there is no prophet after me? I am leaving you behind for a purpose that had there been anybody else on the face of this earth who could do what you are about to do, I would have chosen them, but I'm choosing you for a purpose far greater than what you can do for me in Karbala.'" And he left with him a note saying, "Do not open this until word of my demise has reached you." When Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah, when Imam Hussein passed away, people had become accustomed to the following. Rasulullah left his heir, which is Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen left Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba had sons, but Imamah didn't go to his sons. Imamah went to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So people were under the impression that Imamah will not go to Imam Zainul Abidin, it will go to Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah. And these people are known as the Kiswiyya. They came to Imam Muhammad and they said to him, "You are the Imam Ma'soom after Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba and Imam Hussein." He said, "Okay, well I'm not." They said, "No, you are." He said, "Fine, give me your bay'ah." When Imam Sajjad returned to Medina, he said to his uncle, "Uncle, you are not the Imam." There was a big divide amongst the Shia community on who is the Imam. Because remember, not all of the people were in Karbala. As a matter of fact, it was only the ladies of Karbala that were in Karbala. So no one was there to witness Imam Hussein pass on Imamah to Imam Sajjad. No one was there to hear about this. So now Imam Sajjad is faced with the dilemma: how do I prove that I am God's Hujjah on earth? So he says to his uncle Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah, "My uncle, you are not the Imam." He says, "Well, the people say I'm the Imam." He said, "But did Allah say you're the Imam?" He said, "Well, how do we prove whether Allah said I am the Imam or no?" So the Imam says to Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah, "Oh my uncle, if you are truly the Imam, then you wouldn't mind journeying with me on Hajj to ask the Hajar al-Aswad, the black stone, to give you the oath of allegiance, to give you bay'ah." Now, let me break it down for you. You grew up in the house of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. You saw the miracles of Ali. You saw the miracles of Imam Hassan. You saw the martaba of Imam Hussein. You would be a very, and with all due respect to Imam Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah, I'm talking about the average person here, you'd be very, very stupid and an enemy of your own nafs if you challenged an Imam Ma'soom. Yes? As in, if I really wanted Imamah for myself, the moment Imam Sajjad says, "Let's go to the Hajar al-Aswad," I say, "No, I'm staying, I don't need to go." Because I know most certainly I'll find my destruction. But Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah journeys with Imam Sajjad. And when he goes with Imam Sajjad, they come to the Hajar al-Aswad, where in Mecca, where all the Muslims of the world have converged for Hajj. This is the best exposure that you can get. When they get to the Hajar al-Aswad, according to At-Tabrisi, according to Usul al-Kafi, according to Bihar al-Anwar, according to all the major Shia books, this narration is there from not one source but from many, many sources, because those who witnessed the event were in the thousands. That Muhammad ibn Hanafiya walked up to the Hajar al-Aswad and said, "O the Hajar al-Aswad, who is the Hujjah of Allah and who has wasila after Hussein?" And the black stone was silent. So Muhammad ibn Hanafiya is told by Imam Sajjad, "Oh my uncle, had you truly been the Hujjah of Allah, it would have responded to you in that tongue which the people would have understood." So at that moment, Muhammad ibn Hanafiya invites the Imam. He says, "Okay, well, if you're really the Imam, you ask." See, what is he trying to do? He's trying to prove the Imamah of Imam Sajjad. This sounds very much like when Imam Hassan and Hussein, an elderly man, came up to them and said, and he was doing wudu wrong, and Imam Hassan and Hussein said, "Oh uncle, would you not see and observe how we do wudu? Maybe one of us is wrong, so you can tell us, given that you are an elder and more respectable person in the community." When the man saw Imam Hassan and Hussein do wudu in the same way, he said, "By Allah, your wudu is right and my wudu is wrong, for you are the sons of Fatima to Zahra and you know better than I know." So Ahlul Bayt had this concept of role playing in order to educate others. Bahlul was commanded to live a life of role playing by Imam Musa al-Kadhim. Here, Muhammad ibn Hanafiya and Imam Sajjad are playing out a role so that Yazid and his authority will not intervene. As far as they were concerned, this was a family feud. It had nothing to do with Imamah. It's a family feud. And as far as they were concerned politically, it stands in their favor if Ahlul Bayt begin to fight each other, because then they can kill each other. So up until this point, Yazid and his army did not get involved. They said it's a family problem, let them solve it, it's tribal. So Imam Sajjad alayhi salam Allah offered 2 units of prayers. And everybody is observing. And then he looked to the Hajar al-Aswad and he extended his hand and he said, "Oh Hajar al-Aswad, tell me who is the wasi and who has the power of shafa after Imam Hussein alayhi salam Allah?" With a booming, echoing voice in a fluent Arabic tongue, according to all the narrations, the Hajar al-Aswad said, "By Allah, oh Allah, I hold you as a testimony and witness that the one who I give allegiance to is the wasi after Hussein ibn Ali. He is the son of Fatima and Rasulullah. He is Imam Zainul Abidin wa Sayyidul Sajidin Ali ibn al-Hussein alayhi salam Allah." Now, you've got all these people in Mecca traveling from all different parts of the world. You see, if I had a problem with, say, for example, Akbar or anybody, and I said, "You know what, we're going to go to uncle and he's going to resolve the issue," it's not a story for you to tell, right? It's not a big story. But if, for example, we said, "You know what, we're going to go to that Zari and we're going to ask the Zari to testify," if that Zari speaks, guess what's going to happen? Wajiwa, mu'jiza. Right? It makes good news, it spreads around. So like wildfire, the news of the talking black stone spread across the Muslim world. Those who wanted to accept the Imamah of the Imam came to him and gave him his oath, their oath of allegiance. And those who did not want to accept him followed other people. But in this way, Imam alayhi salam Allah achieved the first point, in that he proved without any dispute or a shadow of a doubt that he is an Imam Ma'soom. And in fact, that put an immediate end to all the disturbance amongst the Shias on who is the successor of Imam Hussein alayhi salam Allah, in his honor and in the honor of Muhammad ibn Hanafiya. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa alihi. The next thing Imam alayhi salam Allah had to do was to unite the Shia people, to bring us in one place, to make our hearts feel affinity, compassion, love towards one another, to teach us silmun liman salamakum wa harbun liman harabakum, to teach us that we are not each other's enemies, but we are brothers and sisters, that our parents are Ali and Fatima, that our parents is Nubuwah and Imamah, that we all suffer the same loss. You see, you can go anywhere in the world. People will stay up till 6 in the morning partying and dancing together. People will get together on birthdays to laugh and rejoice together. People will go to stand-up comedy shows together. People will go together and go together and go together. By God, I ask you, tell me of one community that every year, without fail, congregates so that they can cry together. A community where the eldest and the youngest do not feel shy to shed tears in front of each other. Where man and woman will cry together. Where an Indian and an Arab and black and white from different parts of the world are all united through the love of Ahlul Bayt. Where else do you find such a community? Times of joy may bring us together, but sorrow is the greatest. 9/11 should serve as a reminder for us when America all of a sudden came together in the face of terrorism and extremism, yes? Before 9/11, how were black people treated in America? How were African Americans misrepresented in the media? How were they treated? You know, there's a stand-up comedian who actually talks about this. He says, you know, I love the Muslims. Because of 9/11 now, people treat African Americans a bit more nicely. Because they're not afraid of us anymore. Now they need someone with a bit of hood behind them, you know. Because in case someone decides to pop off with Allahu Akbar, at least I've got someone who actually knows how to hold a pistol. I mean, it's an African American saying, it does sound derogatory in some sort of way, but what he's saying is that America united in its sorrow. Before the sorrow, there were thousands of happy occasions in America that did not unite people. But that one event of sorrow brought everyone together. For us, despite our differences in the tongues that we speak, in the cultures that we have, I know Shias in Russia, indigenous Russians. I know an indigenous Japanese. His name is Sheikh Sunada, who is in Japan teaching a hawza, opening a hawza in Japan, where they speak in the indigenous Japanese language, Majalis of Imam Hussein, every single year, 10 nights. And the funniest part about it is that all those sitting in the Majalis, the majority of them are Arabs and Pakistanis, and their resident alim is Japanese, and the Majalis held in Japanese. Yet, unfortunately, here in America and in the UK, it took us years before we actually even became okay with the notion of having Majalis in English, right? We were all united because of one man's effort, Imam Sajjad alayhi salamullah. Imam Sajjad, to unite the people without raising the awareness of Bani Umayyah la'natullah alayhim, opened his door as he commemorated the istishhad of Imam Hussein. You see, if we just killed your father, we can't tell you not to cry for him, can we? As in, Bani Umayyah can't come up to him and say, why are you crying? After all that they've done to his father, they have to allow him to mourn. But the Imam did more than that. The Imam actually encouraged qasidas and shairis. You know, a lot of people frown on qasida and shairi and say, oh, why do we have these marsiyas? Why do we have naats? Why do we have? Imam Sajjad encouraged that. And more than that, Imam Sajjad alayhi salamullah would pay the best reciter, the best poem about Imam Hussein, Imam would pay them to encourage this culture amongst the people. And there were people that came to Majalis to cry for Imam Hussein, and there were people who loved poetry who came to listen. You know, some people turn around and say, what is this wah-wah Majalis? We have people going, no, this, that. What is this jungly behavior? No, it's not jungly. Imam encouraged that. Imam encouraged these people to turn around and say, MashaAllah, what beautiful praise about Imam Hussein alayhi salamullah. One person writes a poem about, but be very careful, my brothers and sisters, when you write poetry about Imam Hussein. Don't get too caught up in the wahwa, but get more caught up in the reality of depicting Imam Hussein as he was. Right? Alhamdulillah, I come from a family of poets, and someone wrote to my father and he said, would you be free? I need to call you. I've written a qasida about Imam Hussein alayhi salamullah. I want you, given your name in the Arab community, I want you to, you know, give me the green light to go ahead and publish this. And the guy begins to talk. He says, I fell in love and my lover, you know, they are beautiful. Their eyes are like this and their hair is black like night and their face is illuminating like the moon and their skin is soft and radiant. And then at the end, he just says one line. He says, my beloved is Hussein. My dad says, lanat on you, and on pens like that. He said, well, why are you sending lanat on me? He said, all this time I thought you're talking about a woman. Honestly. He said, the way you're painting it all this time, I thought this is ghazal. You're talking about a woman. You're telling me this is Imam Hussein? If this is what you know about Imam Hussein, then salamullah on Imam Hussein. He's no longer with us. So my dad tells him about the poetry of Du'b al-Khuzali. He says, what about that poetry? Where he says to Imam Hussein alayhi salamullah, never have I seen a person who fell to the ground wounded with a fatal arrow in his heart, yet he made the bravest warriors run like cowards. In Karbala, they would come next to Imam Hussein, but then they would run away because when they looked in his eyes, they saw a warrior before them. He says, you want to depict that brave Hussein and tell me he's got soft skin? Stop listening to music first and foremost, because now you're depicting Imam Hussein according to what Drake and these guys say, right? Depict him as he should be. Depict him in his honor, in his prestige, in the nobility of lineage that he came from. Depict him in the principles that he stood up for. Depict him in his not being judgmental. Depict him that he did not discriminate between black and white, old and young, Muslim and non-Muslim. The Christians were in the caravan of Imam Hussein. Did you know this? The Christians joined Imam Hussein because they found in him that he was a man who spoke truth, not because he had loyalty to this president or this president or this marja or that marja. He only had loyalty to one thing. Amr bil ma'ruf and nahi an al munkar. I don't care who's doing good and who's doing bad. I will praise good and I will condemn bad. And people flocked towards Imam Hussein. Yet unfortunately, we've been in America for almost 50 years. And our next door neighbor doesn't know who Imam Hussein alayhi salamullah is. We walk out in julus and people look at us and don't know what Imam Hussein is about. People see the hijab of Zainab and they fear it instead of loving it. Because we have not done justice to this cause of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salamullah. We thought Imam Hussein is for us only. He stays in the confinement of these four walls. Imam Sajjad said no. Encourage people, pay people to speak about Imam Hussein alayhi salamullah. We should host an open mic and say, here's some information, go read about Imam Hussein. Or don't even read about Imam Hussein. We should host an open mic called Hussein Praises Justice. And we have a reward of $10,000 for the best poem about justice and humanity. I don't care if it's a Jew, I don't care if it's a Zionist, I don't care if it's a Hindu, I don't care if it's an atheist. I want people to associate this name of Hussein with these principles of justice. And when I bring people to the majlis of the Imam, or it could be in a theater, or it could be in a Hilton hotel, it doesn't matter. A majlis is not confined anywhere. A majlis is where the values of Hussein are spoken. We need to encourage that in our societies, in our communities. Otherwise, in the words of Nicholas Machiavelli, and I don't like to quote him very much because he's not so Hussein-like, right? But he says, if you have the opportunity in times of peace to change the tide of politics to your favor, but you sit there and do nothing, then when politics oppresses you, you have no right to complain. And right now, politics is heading in a direction where we could be oppressed. Yes. I don't know if any of you has read about the man in Philadelphia who got shot just 2 days ago. He's a cab driver. He dropped a person to his house, and along the way they were having a conversation, and the cabbie turned out to be a Muslim. And the man who was in the car, when they got to the house, he said, 1 minute, my wallet is in the house. He went in his house, came out with a rifle, started shooting at the car. The man drove off. He got shot in the back. For being what? For being Muslim. Do you think if that man and we all together, if we made more effort to put the name of Ahlul Bayt in our community, do you think we'd be getting shot at? Where were we when 9/11 happened? When ISIS and the likes of ISIS have been killing the Zuwar of Hussein for 1400 years, why didn't we speak up? Why didn't we tell the American people, listen, you guys, we've been suffering this injustice for 1400 years. Come talk to us. We can tell you why these people are radical. We can explain to you how to tackle it. We can tell you how to survive it. Instead, no, we just buried like ostriches, put our heads in the ground. And today we're suffering because of that. Imam Sajjad didn't bury his head under the ground. Yazid was more worse than America. But Imam alayhi salamullah said, no, now is a time where if my enemy is putting in 1% to destroy me, I'm putting in 110% to survive. Now it's about survival. Now it's about ensuring that these principles are not associated with ISIS. That doesn't mean I can't have unity with people of the Ahl Sunnah, because they're suffering ISIS equally. As a matter of fact, in my humble opinion, Sunnis are the first victims of ISIS, because at least people don't say ISIS belongs to the Shia. But Sunnis are suffering. Sunnis all over the world are being said, oh, ISIS is an offshoot of your tree. So we need to have a united front with our brothers and sisters from Ahl Sunnah. Forget what's happening in London, forget what's happening everywhere else in the world. You are an American Muslim living in America. Deal with this here right now. Think globally, but act locally. Make a change. Right? Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Imam Sajjad alayhi salamullah encouraged this culture of people coming to mourn for Imam Hussein, and he encouraged it by giving people what they want, all right? You know, pesa, it makes us do things. So the Imam started to condition the people, come do zikr of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salamullah, don't worry, I'll pay you for it if I have to. As a matter of fact, Imam wanted to maintain this standard that even when people weren't expecting payment, Imam still paid them. There's an incident where the Khalifa at the time, or rather the tyrant and the usurper at the time, Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, went to Hajj, and Hisham was living where? He was living in Damascus. So the people of Damascus didn't know Imam Sajjad, and the people of Mecca and Medina didn't really know Hisham. So when he came to Mecca, he wanted to touch the black stone, but he couldn't, because obviously if you've ever been Hajj, all those elbows flying, you're not getting anything, right? Rules of Mihram, now Mihram just fall, honestly. So he didn't want to embarrass himself. You know, you're the Khalifa, you're the Imam of the Muslimin, you. Imagine, you know, all the pomp and glory that he's fed to the people of Damascus, and nobody moves for you, so you kind of look stupid right now. So to save face, he said, you know what, let's camp on the hill. I am the king, I am the generous one. These people are like my children. Let them go touch the stone first, and then I'll come. You know, these guys, spin doctors. So he went and he sat. As he sat, a 26-year-old male happened to walk by, bare feet, wearing only an ihram, no entourage, nothing. And the Hujjaj parted for him like the ocean parted for Musa ibn Imran. So he kissed the black stone and he walked away. One of the people of Damascus said, Man hadha? Who is he? The Khalifa wants to save face, so he begins saying, who is he? Who is he? He's a nobody. At this moment, Farazdaq immediately stood up and said, he is the one who the earth of Kaaba knows him. The ihram on his shoulders recognize him. He is the one who the black stone longs for him to touch it, and if you desire to kiss it, it only desires to be kissed by him. He is the son of Fatima if you haven't recognized him. He is the one whom Nubuwwah came from his house. Humanity on the day of judgment will enter Jannah because of his grandfather. He is the son of Ali, the best of the creation of Allah. Your saying of who is he does not negate his status, neither does it lower him. Surely he is an individual who, had it not been for the words there is no God but Allah, the word no would have never left his lips. In generosity, when people said give, he never once said no. And when people asked questions about religion, he never once said no, I don't have the answer. The only time he uttered the word no is when he said La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. Farazdaq is immediately placed in prison. Then Farazdaq, being a poet, poets are very powerful. He said a poem about Hisham. Hisham used to have this twitch in his neck like that. And he was cross-eyed. Now this is not to make fun of anybody's disability or medical condition, but this is what Farazdaq did, is he said, what kind of a world am I living in where a man who's cross-eyed, that he cannot see Sirat al-Mustaqim if it was in front of him, is able to put me in prison? What kind of a world have I come to? So all the people in prison began to laugh about the way he mocked Hisham. So Hisham said, if I don't release him, he's going to start a revolution against me. So he released Farazdaq. When he released Farazdaq, Imam Sajjad came to him in person and gave him a bag of gold. Farazdaq said, Imam, I feel insulted. I didn't do this for the gold. I done it because it is the right thing to do. It is haqq. Imam alayhi salam, Allah said to him, Ahlul Bayt have never insulted anyone, so what do you mean you feel insulted? I'm giving it to you because I want to encourage those who come after you. And we know where your heart is, don't worry. We can't buy you, we know that. We already own you with our love. The idea here is what? I shouldn't say, oh, I can only give hadiyah to the Maulana and to the Muslimin. No, give hadiyah to anyone who speaks truth and justice. Encourage your Christian friends to come. Yes, give them hadiyah if they speak about Imam Hussein. Encourage them to read about Imam Hussein. You see, when Imam Hussein is only spoken about by us, he becomes a Muslim identity. But Allah didn't say Imam Hussein is a Muslim identity. Ya rahmatullahi al-wasi'ah. Oh, the mercy of Allah that encompasses everyone. We need to tell people Hussein is not my property. Yes, I'm a Shia. I'm fortunate enough that I was born this way and I know about him. But you know, that sale is not just for me, that's for you as well. You should also benefit equally. So Imam Sajjad alayhi salamullah began this majalis concept where he invited the people to come and attend, but not only to come and attend, but to also encourage them in speaking praise of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salamullah. Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alayhi. My question is, since when was it normal? And since when was it okay that we trample on the efforts of Imam al-Sajjad and use majalis to break each other apart? Since when did we get caught up in this Yazidi mentality of my sangat is better than your sangat, and if you recite, my people are not going to do matam because you're the one who's reciting? Are you doing matam because of the guy who recites, or are you doing matam because of the guy we're reciting about? I'm not going to attend this majlis because they have Maulana Fulani. Did you go to the majlis for the Maulana? If you went to the majlis for the Maulana, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, ask the Maulana to give you shafa'ah. Don't ask Imam Hussein because you didn't go for him. We need to understand that our sorrow should unite us above everything else. Just because someone comes with a way that we don't understand, support him. As long as his intention is for propagating Ahlul Bayt, let him do it. Imam Sajjad propagated in many different ways, through poetry, through himself crying in the market, through buying slaves and educating them and freeing them, through remaining silent at times but being eloquent at others. There's no one way to speak about Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein is a universal language, and it should not be confined. Urdu language is not vast enough to encompass Imam Hussein. Arabic is not eloquent enough to encompass Imam Hussein. English is not knowledgeable enough to understand Imam Hussein. French is not sweet enough to speak about the beauty of Hussein. No one language or culture in the world can confine Imam Hussein. So therefore share him with everyone so that we can do some justice to this name of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Allah sallu ala nabi. The third thing Abu Abdullah, or rather Imam Sajjad, wanted to achieve is, now that I've told the people I am their Imam, and now that I have gathered the people together under one roof, how do I give them teachings about their religion and how they should interact as a people, again without alerting the authority? The Imam begins to compile what is now known today as a Sahifa Sajjadiyya, where the Imam is not talking to us, but he's talking to his God. And the way which the Imam converses with God, there are thousands of lessons to be found. And this is something that I cannot emphasize enough. Please, please, please do yourself a favor. And do your Imam a favor, don't let his work go to waste if you don't understand Arabic. By Allah, it makes no sense whatsoever sitting in a place reciting dua in Arabic. Dua isn't just about a beautiful voice, no. Dua is a conversation between the one in need and the one who can provide his needs. Dua therefore must be understood in that language. If I speak Urdu, pick up Mafatih al-Jinan in Urdu, read Dua Kumail in Urdu, understand what your Imam is trying to educate you. If you speak French, pick up Dua Kumail in French. If you speak Spanish, pick up Dua Kumail in Spanish. Don't waste your time. Because otherwise, Dua Kumail is just going to be a ritual. Only part we know is Allahumma fa ilayka madadtu yadi. Because now it's hajat time, right? Now I'm putting my hand out for hajat. No, I should understand everything in dua. Because this was the way Imam Sajjad was able to communicate with us. This was the way in which he educated us. Dua Abu Hamza Thamali, its Imam says when he's teaching Abu Hamza, what does he say? Oh Allah, you took a solemn oath that you will respond to those who call upon you. You took a solemn oath that if I do dua, you will answer me. Yet here is my place that I have sat in very often, time and again. And I have called upon you time and again, and yet you do not respond to me. And after having analyzed the situation, I realized that the problem is not in you, because you never break your promises. Therefore, the problem must be in me. Self-analysis. So I analyzed my life and came to a conclusion. The only reason you have not answered my dua is because, one, when you looked in the majalis of those who are knowledgeable and wise and God-fearing, you never once found me amongst them. But when you looked in the majalis of those who backbite and butcher one another, and those who create fasad in the land, you found me there laughing with them and cheering them on. So therefore my dua was covered from you. Beautiful. If I'm spending my days in the nightclubs and all of a sudden the doctors tell me I've got cancer, what's the chances of my dua being accepted? But if I spend my time in the majlis of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, and at the end of the majlis we recite 5 times Amman yujib al-muftara idha da'ahu wa yakshif as-su', what's the likelihood of our dua reaching the heavens? Maybe if me, myself, my dua won't reach, we all know Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen sits at the door of the majlis. So when she leaves, she takes my dua with her. What's the chances of my dua coming back unanswered? 0. My dua will be answered for sure. A lesson that the Imam is teaching you: choose your friends carefully, because they will impact not only your life in the dunya, but also whether your hajat are answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another beautiful dua of the Imam, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He begins by praising Allah. All praise be to the one who knows the shadow's weight when shadows are cast. Only 3 years ago, scientists in Europe discovered that our shadow actually has a weight. Imam Sajjad has been saying it since then. Science. Ahlul Bayt speaks science. But until we start to read them and start to understand them and start to analyze them, we'll never reach a conclusion. We'll be running around in circle like Bani Israel for 40 years. Why? Because they had the scriptures, but they didn't carry the scriptures. Allah says in the Quran al-Kareem, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Jum'ah, read it. The example of those who carry the book but know not what they carry is like a donkey carrying books on his back. Do I want to be a donkey? No, I should read these books, I should comprehend them, I should understand them. And when I comprehend and I understand them, you see, let's take one step back with the salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. When I come to understand the du'as of Ahlul Bayt, Do I just keep them to my own jamaat, my own community? No. Some of us walk down the streets and when we see a homeless person, we judge them, yes? Some of us, unfortunately, for whatever reasons, the way we've been conditioned, when we hear about a non-Muslim suffering, we say, good. May God increase their suffering. No. That's not the way Amir al-Mu'mineen would have acted. That's not the way Imam Hussein would have acted. Imam Hussein in Karbala, Shimr was on his chest. You know what Imam Hussein said to Shimr? Oh Shimr, the arrow in my heart is a fatal wound. I'm gonna die in a matter of moments. Save yourself from Jahannam and do not cut off my head. I'm a dead man. Go back and boast that you killed me, fine, but don't kill me, don't cut off my head. I'm not saying this to you because I want to live. I know I'm dead, I'm telling you I'm dead. But I don't want you to go to Jahannam because of me on my account. We need to have more of that Imam Hussein in us. Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam Allah, when he passed away, he left a will to Imam Hassan. Oh my son, after the 3 days of Aza are over, I want you to go to this house and give food to the blind man. Imam Hassan goes to that house. The blind man is like, where have you been, my friend? It's been 3 days, you haven't come to me. I've missed your company. Imam Hassan says, we had a funeral in our house. And the guy is blind. He doesn't know the difference between Imam Hassan and Imam Ali. He says, oh, you've been gone. I've been looking for you. You know, nobody in this community listens to me when I bash Ali ibn Abi Talib. Come, let me tell you how bad Ali is. Let's make mockery about Ali ibn Abi Talib. Imam Hassan began to cry. The man says to him, why are you crying? He says to him, you always make fun of Ali? He says, yeah, you should know. Every time you laugh with me and you say, oh, forgive Ali, maybe Ali doesn't know what he's doing. Imam Hassan began to cry more. He said to him, oh blind man, the reason why there's been 3 days that no one has come to you is because that man who used to come to you has died. That was Ali ibn Abi Talib. Where is this compassion of Ahlul Bayt? Until we read their du'as, until we read their lives and emulate it, by Allah, I can tell you one thing, no American person would ever want the Shias to leave this country. We have wealth, we have beauty, we have richness of culture and knowledge, and we need to take that out. But we can't take that out if our julus is full of Urdu and no English. We can't take that out if our banners are in Arabic and not English. People don't understand. Speak to the people in the tongue that they understand. We're not trying to preserve Desi culture here. We're trying to preserve Imam Hussein. And in the same way that Imam Sajjad alayhi salamullah taught the Africans in their African tongue about Imam Hussein, we must teach the people about Imam Hussein in their very own tongue. And these are just some of the lessons we can take from Imam Sajjad alayhi salamullah, and we can hope to implement them, because until we do, until we start to read more about Ahlul Bayt alayhim salamullah, this world is going to be full of problems. What is our dua when we pray for Imam Zamana? Oh Allah, hasten the appearance of your Imam. So he can do what? He can? Justice for whom? Me and you? Or the whole world? For all, right? The whole universe. So do you think when Imam Zamana is going to come out, he's going to discriminate between a Jew and a Christian? Do you think Imam Zamana, when he comes out, is going to discriminate between man and woman? It's for the whole world. So if you are the Shia of that Imam, do what the Imam needs. Help lay the foundations. But you won't be able to help lay the foundations if you don't know how to build. And the way you build is by learning the building bricks of this religion, which are found in the dua of Ahlul Bayt. So therefore, do yourself a favor and read it in a language that you can understand, and spend some time being more concerned with the beauty of the words rather than the beauty of the voice of the one reciting. There's beauty in these words, take it. A doctor reading Dua Kumail will find medical cures. A scientist will find science, and a politician will find political resolve. For every person there is something to be taken from the words of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salamullah. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ala. Let us dim out the lights as we recount and recollect the tragedies which Imam Sajjad alayhi salamullah was made to suffer, and how he encouraged this constant lifetime. We owe every teardrop that we owe it to Imam Sajjad. Every thawab for every teardrop, every thawab every time you slap your face in sorrow for Hussein, every thawab of every julus, every thawab of every majlis, of every Fatiha is indebted to Imam Sajjad. You can turn off the lights completely. Bismillah. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. One day, Imam Sajjad of many days began to weep for Imam Hussein alayhi salamullah. So one of his companions looked at him and he said, Imam, death for you is a norm. Everybody in your family died. And the honor from Allah is that their death was all in shahada. So why do you cry? This is an honor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam said to him, oh friend, yes indeed, death is a norm for us. And the honor from Allah upon us is that all our relatives have died shaheed. But I ask you by Allah, when was it normal that the daughters of Zahra are made to walk without their parda? When was it normal that the daughters of Zahra were made to sit in a place where sharab was being consumed? This is my reason for mourning. This is why I am crying. Many reasons why Imam Sajjad alayhi salamullah was weeping. But on a night such as this, when the Bibis came back to Karbala, this was the most difficult for Imam Sajjad alayhi salamullah. This is a time when Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, he says, when we returned from Sham, we came to a cross point where one road would lead to Madinah to Rasulullah and one road would take us back to Karbala. He says at that moment, the person who was our guide, he came back to me. He said, Imam Sajjad, where do you want to go? Do you want to go back to Medina or do you want to go back to Karbala? Imam Sajjad went to Sayyida Zainab. He said, Amma Zainab, shall we go back to Medina or shall we go to Karbala? She said to him, Sajjad, take me to the land of my beloved. Take me to the land of Aba Abdullah. Blessed are the people in Karbala at this moment. How I wish I was there with them. How we all wish we were there with them. Ajrukum ala Allah. Imam is telling the story. He says, when we came to Karbala, from afar, when we could just begin to see the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salamullah, Sayyida Zainab threw herself from the camel and she began to run in the direction of the graves, but she didn't know to whom is each grave. She didn't know which is the grave of Imam Hussein and which is the grave of Abbas, which is the grave of Habib and which is the grave of the Shuhada. She came to Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. She said, my Sajjad, where are the graves? He said, Amma, this is the grave of my father Aba Abdullah. This is the grave of my uncles. This is the grave of my brothers. Then she looked around and she said, Abbas, where is the grave of Abbas? He said to her, Amma, the grave of Abbas is by the river because he did not want to leave that place. Ajrukum ala Allah. Zainab did not come back alone. Imam Sajjad did not come back alone. They came back with the heads of the Shuhada. So they began to bury them one by one. And this brought back painful memories to Imam Sajjad. What painful memories did it bring back to Imam Sajjad? The memory of when he came back to Karbala on the third night after Ashura to bury the bodies of the Shuhada. What happened on that night? Ajrukum ala Allah. Imam Sajjad, he tells the story, when he came back, Zainab alayhi salam said to him, she said, oh my Sajjad, where did you go? This is when they were in Kufa. He said, Amma Zainab, I just came back from Karbala. She said, then why is there all the dust covering you? He said, I just finished burying the bodies of the Shuhada. She says, oh Sajjad, how did you bury the bodies of the Shuhada? He said to her, I done this and I done that. Then she said, tell me, how did you bury the body of Aba Abdullah? This is when Imam Sajjad begins to weep. sleep. Imam Sajjad says to her, Amma, with my very own hands, I had to remove the arrows one by one from the chest of Abu Abdullah. Amma Zainab, when I picked up the body of my father Hussein, if I picked up the right side, the left side fell. If I picked up the left side, the right side fell. She said, why, O Sajjad? He said, because they cut him to thousands of pieces. She said, what else? He said, Amma, when I went to bury my uncle Abbas, I wish I could have carried him as one whole body, but I had to pick up his pieces one by one and place them in the alam and bury Abbas. What else happened, O my Sajjad? He said, Amma, I buried my brother Ali al-Akbar. Where did you bury him? Mother Fatima said to me that I should bury him by the feet of Imam Hussein, because the son never rises above the father. She said, okay, and what else did you do? He said, I buried Ali al-Asghar. She said, where did you bury Ali al-Asghar? He said, Amma Zainab, I began to dig a grave, a tiny hole for a 6-month-old infant. He said, but then I heard a voice coming from the grave of Abu Abdullah, from the severed neck of Imam Hussein. Oh my Sajjad, put my Ali al-Asghar on my chest, for the grave is a very dark and lonely place, and he is only an infant, and he is only an infant. أجركم على الله. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب سينقلبون. ماتم حسين.
Mu'mineen, please line up in these lines here. Hussain, Hussain. Hussain, Hussain. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate, till the skies illuminate with the light you radiate.
Till the skies illuminate with the light you radiate.
Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate, till the skies illuminate with the light you radiate. Till the skies illuminate with the light you radiate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Buried in your heart the son of Fatima.
Buried in your heart the son of Fatima.
Warith of Adam wa Nuh Mustafa.
Warith of Adam wa Nuh Mustafa.
That Hussain ibn Ali al-Murtaza.
That Hussain ibn Ali al-Murtaza.
Who who defied every zulm and ashqiya. With his final call you still reverberate. With his final call you still reverberate. Till the skies illuminate. With the light you radiate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate.
Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate.
He who taught us how to brave adversity.
He who taught us how to brave adversity.
Never compromise on your humanity.
Never compromise on your humanity.
He who fought malice with generosity.
He who fought malice with generosity.
And became the standard of integrity. Only if his model we could emulate. Only if his model we could emulate. Till the skies illuminate. With the light you radiate. Everyone, Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Karbala, your message is pristine and pure.
Karbala, your message is pristine and pure.
Never be unjust nor injustice endure.
Never be unjust nor injustice endure.
Wealth and power never should inspire awe.
Wealth and power never should inspire awe.
Everything you heard and everything you saw, till our final breaths we shall commemorate. Till our final breaths we shall commemorate. Till the skies illuminate. Everyone, with the light you radiate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Karbala, you would be lost in history.
Karbala, you would be lost in history.
And Ali Akbar wa Abbas Jari.
And Ali Akbar wa Abbas Jari.
Were it not for your Sa'i bint Ali.
Were it not for your Sa'i bint Ali.
In the court of arrogance and tyranny, now forever will your sermon resonate. Now forever will your sermon resonate. Till the skies illuminate. With the light you radiate. Till the skies illuminate. With the light you radiate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Every Ashura we Shia must renew.
Every Ashura we Shia must renew.
Karbala's anthems in our character too.
Karbala's anthems in our character too.
Our mourning should inspire what we do.
Our mourning should inspire what we do.
Only then can we we deliver what is due. Mawla, help our speech and actions integrate. Mawla, help our speech and actions integrate. Till the skies illuminate with the light you radiate. Till the skies illuminate with the light you radiate. Everyone! Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Karbala, your tragedy we will narrate. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.